is the North American service broadcasting on 17.70, 15.42, 12.05.
Are you a worshiper of the devil?
What have you done to its eyes?
You'll be impersonated by the other voice.
The next time you're frightened in the dark, don't scream.
They are not what they claim to be. You're listening to Radio.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey,
Hi.
welcome to Radio Grave.
Hi.
I'm here with Amber,
I'm here with Dom.
and we're here in the same place we always are,
6 feet under.
in the dirt,
Closer to hell.
in a co-coffin.
Co-coffin?
We're co-sleeping forever.
Co-coffin. C-O coffin.
We're doing the co-eternal sleep.
It was half off, which is surprising.
You'd think it'd be double.
We're frugal.
We are. I mean, we're poor.
Okay.
Anyway,
That's true.
we haven't always been down here, because in fact, we had some appointments
Yeah.
earlier today, and we were riding back to the grave in a hearse,
Yes.
and we saw the craziest thing when we were looking out the back of the hearse.
Yeah.
Our coffin's transparent. Anyway, we were looking out the back of the hearse and we saw this woman jump out into traffic and get hit by a semi, but she was fine.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
There was another woman that I saw too, who was a doppelganger
Holy fuck.
of that woman. And she got hit by a Volkswagen Polo.
Could they have been twins, or are twins not real?
Twins aren't real and they're weird. And I'm just saying that because it's true.
Twins are a phenomenon.
And we don't like them.
Wow.
No, I'm not going to say that.
But
But we don't.
it reminds me of a story, though.
Yes.
In fact, it's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh my God, yes.
It's the story of the Eriksson twins
Oh my God, yes.
and their little daytime romp out and about, I guess.
I guess it's like a children's book.
It's Erica and
children's
Ursula's
book.
a children's book from Sweden.
You say Erica and Ursula's?
Yeah, Erica and Ursula's Big Day Out.
Sabina and Ursula's Big Day Out.
I don't give a fuck.
Sabina and Ursula's Big Day Out
By Roald Dahl.
by Roald Dahl.
I like this case a lot. I think it's so weird. I think people are so weird. Twins are really strange. And there are a lot of things that I don't understand. And that thrills me.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm kind of on the other side of the spectrum where I think it's actually really brutal.
Oh.
And it's really, of course, I think it's really brutal and tragic.
You're not thrilled?
No,
I'm not supposed to be hard right now?
Oh, no,
Oh,
hard.
fuck. Think
I
of
mean,
baseball.
Think of baseball.
Think of Nana.
Oh my God. Think
God,
of
she's a
Nana.
grave over.
Yikes.
It's all right.
Put that trigger warning up. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the Eriksson twins and the murder of Glenn Hollinshead.
It is, no pun intended, it's a wild ride.
It's a wild ride.
It's a whirlwind.
And we're just really glad that you're here for it. So, buckle up because you're going to need a seatbelt for this one.
Buckle up, buckaroo.
Yeah, buckle up, buckaroo. So, we're just going to begin in 1967, which is when identical twins Ursula and Sabina Eriksson were born in Sunne, Sweden on November 3rd to their mother, 30-year-old Yvonne Adele Olsen, and their father, 45-year-old Jan Sexton Eriksson. Although the twins were born in Sunne, they actually grew up in a rural community outside the city called Grassmark. And as of in 2020, the census records show a population of only about 1,000 people in Grassmark. So we're talking extremely rural.
Rural.
That's
That's how we say it down here. Rural.
So the twins had two older siblings. They had an older sister named Mona, who was 6 years their senior, and an older brother named Bjorn, who was 3 years their senior. The twins had an unbreakable bond and were reported to be very close with their brother Bjorn. There's not a lot of information available about their sister, but it does not seem as if Mona was very close or involved with the twins. Maybe it's because she was older, or maybe she's just out of the picture in regards to being involved with the case.
Maybe she's a bitch.
Maybe she's a bee, or maybe, I think she's just older, maybe. So I just want to preface this next segment with a disclaimer. During my research, I came across a lot of dishonest claims about Ursula and Sabina Eriksson. So we've just decided to leave some specific claims and testimonies out of our retelling. These supposed claims are weakly sourced and plainly based in gossip, conjecture, and hearsay to be used to defame and shame and slander Sabina and Ursula and the Eriksson family. So we want to make a conscious effort to not spread misinformation. And that being said, although they are far and few in between, we have decided to include a few eyewitness claims and testimonies which contribute to the Eriksson twins' familial background, upbringing, social life, and personal lives pre-2008. These testimonies are sourced from past neighbors, social workers, former classmates, friends, and former coworkers, and I decided to choose them based on their relevance and their unbiased nature towards the situation. So as we continue, we want to be clear that the following claims we have decided to include are still alleged, as they cannot be proven or disproven.
I bet I could prove them.
I bet I could disprove them.
I can fix her.
Right. I can fix them.
Just one.
Not much is known about the twins' early life, but it seems that up until the early 1980s, the Eriksson family home was a little tumultuous. There is documentation that the Erikssons came from humble beginnings and that the area in which they lived was low income. Neighbors allegedly claimed that it was not abnormal for the Erikssons to be visited by social services from time to time, and it was rumored that the family's goats could be found loose and wandering aimlessly on their property, and this included the inside of their home as well.
Is that not normal? Should my goats not be on my property?
In your house?
You want my goats in your house?
I don't have any goats.
Not anymore. They got taken away because you wouldn't let them inside.
By CPS.
Child Protective Services because they're kids. Got them.
That's a really good one.
Thanks.
Bjorn, their brother, as a teenager, he was said to have been rambunctious, and this is true for the twins as well. Both girls were described as sort of rude and mouthy, especially towards adults, and specifically the social workers that were always coming to knock upon their door. A bad attitude could be expected from children coming from a dysfunctional home. I feel like that's just a fact. So,
what are you saying? You saying I have a bad attitude?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I don't.
Bitch.
Sounds like you have a bad attitude.
I do.
How's your home life?
Not good.
Oof.
While a lot of these claims are alleged, it should be taken into account that this is the reputation the Erikssons had in their hometown. Come the year 1982, the picture gets much clearer. Ursula and Sabina's mother, Yvonne, would end up leaving her husband and moving herself and her children to the city of Gothenburg, a 3.5-hour drive north of Sunne. Sabina and Ursula would have been 15 years old at the time, and Bjorn would have been 18. And it's unclear if Mona, who was 21 years old at the time, moved to Gothenburg as well, but she is not mentioned. There is very little information available that speaks of to what kind of relationship the Eriksson children had with their father, whether it was good or bad, but we know obviously that Yvonne and Jan had a pretty dysfunctional marriage, as it seems. I mean, they were 15 years apart when they got married and had children.
Don't start the age discourse. We don't need that.
The age gap discourse.
I need mentally ill twin discourse.
Okay, well, let's do it then. Well, actually, we're going to talk about mentally ill daddy first.
That's what they call
Is
me.
that cool?
What?
Mentally ill daddy? Okay, let's do it. In general, there's not much we know about their father, Jan Sexton Eriksson, but it does seem clear that he did not lead a very easy life. Jan was a veteran of the Finnish Winter War, where he fought in the name of Finland and to protect the vulnerability of the Eastern Kingdom of Sweden against the Soviet Union. The Finnish Winter War earned its name on the singular fact that the war spanned over the course of only 4.5 months, beginning on November 30th, the day after my birthday, 1939, and ending on March 13th, 1940. Jan was only 18 years old when he served and was critically injured in combat, and this injury would lead to the eventual amputation of one of his arms, which is fucked up. It is not certain whether or not Jan had suffered from any sort of mental issues before serving in the Swedish military. However, Jan was allegedly well known to be a heavy drinker. It seems fair to assume that Jan likely suffered from PTSD from seeing combat and the loss of his arm. And Jan would end up passing away at the age of 67 in 1989. So after moving to Gothenburg, Yvonne would introduce her children to her new boyfriend, a man also named Bjorn. It is assumed that Yvonne did go on to possibly marry him as well. Not much is known about Yvonne either, and her relationship with her children is not reported as good or bad. But we do know that, like Jan, Yvonne was a heavy drinker. Photos of a teenage Sabina did surface at some point in the early 2000s after a user uploaded 2 snapshots from their 1983-1984 high school yearbook on a Swedish forum website called Flashback. In the photos, Sabina is about 16 or 17 years old, and she looks somewhat boyish, and she's sporting a short, spiky haircut. Her clothes appear to be tattered, but obviously like in a fashionable way, like kind of punkish. And under Sabina is text that reads her sister's name, Ursula Eriksson, followed by the word absent. So we don't know if Ursula graduated from high school or if she just wasn't there that day when photos were taken. But some people who are really deep in this case seem to think that maybe she didn't graduate. And I just don't think that that is what happened. I think she just wasn't there for picture day. Former classmates, including the user who uploaded the yearbook photos of Sabina, claimed that they vaguely remembered the twins from high school and said that Sabina and Ursula were close and kept to themselves. One former classmate shared in a comment on Flashback that they vividly remembered the twins were strange and outwardly aggressive bullies. And allegedly, this commenter recalled an incident in which one of the twins had knocked their friend down by shoulder checking them in the school hallway, like Hollywood high school bullies.
As Sabina and Ursula matured, they both would develop into beautiful women. They were medium height and average build, but both were described as having naturally athletic physiques. They were natural ashy brunettes, but they dyed their hair blonde. They both featured extremely dark, hypnotizing, deep blue eyes. Both continued to be fashionable and unique in their personal style. It was obvious the twins preferred counterculture over the rigid conformity of Scandinavian social norms.
They're punk rock girls.
Punk rock girls, same.
Punk rock girls.
Sabina and Ursula stayed close after high school, and throughout the late 80s and 90s, the twins wasted no time enjoying their youth, but they had a reputation even into their 20s. They were known around the clubbing scene and could be found at dance clubs regularly. A person who knew the twins from the club scene stated that it was common knowledge to just avoid them, suggesting that the twins were wild, outspoken, and unapologetic.
I think I would have avoided them just because they're twins.
That alone?
Am I a twin hater? I'm sorry.
Better than a twink hater.
That's true. I agree.
We're twink lovers, really.
Yeah.
Twink fans.
We're ally.
Ally.
Well, you're queer.
I'm twinkfan666 at ally.net. At queerallyqueer.net.
Whoa.
You're a queer ally, but you're queer as well. That was the royal you.
Oh, the royal you. Get the fuck away from me.
I'm sorry. At the age of 22, fuck.
Sorry.
At the age of 22, Sabina became a mother and named her son Simon. Simon's father is not mentioned anywhere, but it appears that there is a possibility he may have been a Norwegian man. In 2008, Simon would post an update on his MySpace page where he would refer to himself as, quote, Simon Eriksson from Norway. Very cool. Whether Simon was just born in Norway or had a Norwegian father, or both, we do not know for sure. We will see later on that Simon does have a close connection with Norway. Throughout the 1990s, the twins stayed very close and in constant contact, but towards the latter half of those years, they would end up being physically separated from one another. By 1998, Ursula would no longer be living in Northern Europe. She had moved to the U.S. and settled down in Southern California, specifically in Santa Barbara County. During this time, Ursula lived with her boyfriend and was steadily working as a waitress. She went by the nickname Ut Ut.
Ut ut.
Ut Ut.
So beautiful.
Ut Ut work waitress job.
That's what Swedish women sound like.
Fuck off. She often used the surname Eriksson, spelled with an X, so Erixson. Very edgy.
So hard.
So hard. Ursula at this point was described as being pretty normal and friendly and was living a, quote, normal lifestyle.
Ut ut. Good for ut ut.
Good for Ut Ut. Ut Ut do good in waiter job. Sabina, however, was still living in Sweden in the year of 1998 and was renting an apartment in the eastern district of Gothenburg. There she lived with an unnamed boyfriend and her son Simon, who would have been around 9 years old at the time. By 1999, Sabina had moved from Gothenburg, Sweden, to Norway and was working at the Gardermoen airport in Oslo. It is not known how long Sabina worked at the airport, but it's speculated it could have been around 2 years. Sabina's former manager from the airport would describe her being pretty friendly. She had a pretty face, short hair, and a boyish fashion style. This manager would also mention that she was very private and did not like to talk about her personal life, especially her son, and would often get defensive and irritated when people would ask about him. If someone pestered too much, Sabina was known to cold shoulder them and sometimes would even turn on them or hold a grudge against them. It's often presented as fact that after the year 2000, Sabina had settled down in Cork, Ireland, and was happily married with children. In reality, this was just an assumption, and there is far more depth to Sabina's history than what we know today. By the year 2000, Sabina would end up giving custody of her 11-year-old son to Ursula, and Simon would end up moving to America to live with his aunt for several years. While Simon and Ursula were in the US, Sabina would end up moving back to Gothenburg and was reported to have been living a more, quote, caravan lifestyle. In Europe, caravanning is a little different than what it's like in the US. Caravanning in Europe is pretty common, and this is because it's an incredibly affordable way of life. Caravanners usually live out of motorhomes or camper vans and tend to be both resident and transient throughout the year. Camping spots and recreational areas offer cheap parking prices and decent amenities, and it's very normal to see long-stay residents among vacationers. Designated parks, where caravanners are more resident, are places that can be compared to what we in the US know as trailer parks. And Sabina would end up living in a park used mostly by vacationers and caravanners just passing through, but there was a long-stay community present in this park. Allegedly, Sabina was living in this park's community, and it's speculated that her mother lived there as well. This community was believed to be mostly made up of a somewhat unsavory bunch of people who were described as being druggies and alcoholics, quote-unquote. There's no real concrete evidence that shows if Sabina was ever a drug user or alcoholic, but she was submerged in a community that was.
Right.
So you have to kind of guess that she would be, if she's at least around that lifestyle.
Right. And I've kind of thought about it more too, where I'm like, okay, well, if her mother was there, which we will talk about later, if her mother was there, was Sabina living there to take care of her mother? Was it more than just that?
Drugs.
It's all a little speculative, but like we said before, there's this idea that she was living a white housewife role in Cork, Ireland during this time, and she wasn't. She was living in a trailer park.
With basically social misfits.
With social misfits, yeah.
Or outsiders.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, the reason that people assume that she was just like settled and married and living with a family in Cork is that in the news, people will be like, this woman lived with her husband in Ireland.
Yeah.
And so you just assume she's married to a dude in Ireland. She lives in Ireland.
Right.
But as we'll get to, it is not that situation.
Yeah.
It's weird nuance.
There's a lot of really weird stuff that's all over the place. Even saying they had normal lives and normal upbringings. It's like, well, their dad was an alcoholic who only had one arm.
You saying that's not normal?
Not to me.
Oh.
So
maybe I should talk to someone then.
One arm daddy. So you know what I mean? So I think that it's all very kind of steamrolled of these two very normal women did something that was very abnormal.
Right.
But we don't know if she was using drugs or if she was an alcoholic. We just don't know that. We can't say yes or no. But it's alluded. It's inferred. And when you kind of look at her face, no offense to her. I kind of agree.
What does that mean?
You know, you can tell. Okay, I don't know if we can keep that in, but it's inferred.
The years between 1999 to 2005 would go on to be referred to as Sabina's missing years of life. This is because she was without regular contact with Ursula and Simon. After 2005, there's a little more clarity in regards to Sabina's personal life. By 2006, Sabina and Ursula had reconnected and were speaking on the phone on a daily basis. There's no solid information that shows Sabina was living in Ireland at this time, but it does seem likely. We'll revisit that later. In 2007, records show that Sabina did fly to America and stayed with her sister and son for some time throughout the year, but it's unclear for how long. At this time, Simon is still living in America and is 17 to 18 years old. He was either in his last year of high school or was graduated. Simon was a proud stoner and was very submerged in the culture that surrounded that lifestyle.
420.
That 420 blaze culture.
Baby 420. Pass that cigarette joint.
Give the Zaza bong.
The Zaza bong. The Zog. The Ziggy Zog. What? The Ziggy Zonka. What is that? I don't know.
I don't know what you're saying.
420.
But I know that you fucking smoke pot. I can tell
I'm not.
by your knowledge of terms. I can tell that you do.
The terminology. The 420.
I wonder, do people say like 420?
I don't know.
I guess I've seen when people like look for roommates and stuff, they're like 420 friendly.
I do see that too.
Which is,
no thanks.
we're in Oregon.
Everybody.
It's legal, so it's kind of funny.
Some people hate
just don't
it.
write
Some people are
marijuana.
like, no weed.
Well, it is poison, and it is destroying our youth.
He was submerged in the culture. He's like,
He's all
high.
stoned.
He's all stoned. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, there's not really more to it than that. Like any teenager, Simon was very active on MySpace and was very outspoken about his immediate goals in life. He talks about moving to Europe and becoming a drug dealer, specifically selling marijuana, or at least that's what his hope was to do.
Yeah.
Although medical marijuana was legalized in California at the time, possession and distribution of marijuana in the U.S. was still very illegal and usually resulted in excessive legal consequences.
Also, I would like to say at this time, it was also very illegal in Norway.
Absolutely.
As well. And also double down as illegal in Sweden. Through research, I discovered that even today, Sweden is a no-go for weed. But in Norway, they have not lighter sentencing, but they don't blow it out of proportion the way that they do in the U.S.
Wait, they don't do that death sentence?
No death sentence. So, like, even in 2007, like, if Simon was in Norway and got in trouble for selling weed, it would be comparatively a slap on the wrist to what would happen if he had gotten caught selling weed in the U.S.
So you're telling me, if I move to Norway and my neighbor smokes marijuana cigarettes, they're not going to be shot by the police. They're not going to be in front of a firing squad. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I
think carefully before you answer.
I think
will they get shot?
It's a yes or no.
You think they will get shot?
No.
I don't know where to move now. Fuck.
You were really banking on the Norway.
I really
on
was.
the Norway.
The Norway was the way, and I don't know where to go that's safe from Zaza.
Oh, the Zaza we can't handle.
Makes you crazy. There should be like a bumper sticker of like Han Solo or Chewbacca or something, and he has like a little laser gun.
Yeah.
And he's shooting it at a pot leaf, and it says vaporize 420 because he's vaporizing. He's abolishing marijuana use.
That makes sense.
I don't know about Star Wars, though. Are those vaporizing guns?
I think they hate fascists. That's like the whole point.
Hippies.
Email us, radiograypodcast@gmail.com. We don't know what Star Wars is about. Explain it in detail from beginning to end. Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you send an email explaining Star Wars to radiogravepodcast@gmail.com, I'll send you a sticker. If you send a picture of you smoking the ganja, I'll put a demon's curse on you. Simon would romanticize a life in Europe, making easy money.
Can we have a better transition for what we were just doing to that? Moving on.
What?
Moving on.
Anyway.
So.
Long story short, very, very illegal. If you enjoy our content, please rate, review, and consider becoming a patron by visiting patreon.com/radiograve. You can also support us with a one-time donation by visiting buymeacoffee.com/radiograve. Your patronage and support helps us continue to create content for you. You can stay up to date with us by following our Instagram account, Radio Grave Podcast. Thank you for listening. Simon would romanticize a life in Europe making easy money, and coincidentally, he wanted to live in a, quote, hippie van as a drug-dealing caravaner. Imagine that. Eventually, Simon did make his way over to Europe and was living in Norway. Uncle Bjorn had taken up being a professional fisherman and was making a decent life for himself at this time. He was also a father, having had a young son of his own. When in Norway, Simon stayed in close contact with his two best buddies from school via MySpace. The two friends had moved to Killeen, Texas, and were selling weed at the time. Simon would attempt to convince his friends to come to Europe and would boast that they could, quote, make $100 in 20 minutes selling weed in Norway.
Do you think that's true?
Make $100 in 20 minutes? I mean, maybe.
Selling weed in Norway?
In the right place.
Do Norwegians like weed?
Have they tried weed?
I don't know. I don't know anything about them. I feel like that's so, like, ridiculous.
What?
I feel like that's such an 18-year-old boy thing to be like, dude, just come to Norway. We're going to live in a van and we can make $100 in 20 minutes just selling weed.
We're gonna fucking rage.
I remember being like 18 and hearing people being like, I'm going to go trim weed. I'm going to make like $1,000 in a fucking like week. I'm like, sure.
How did that work out for them?
It didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, maybe unrealistic that they
Yeah.
would make $100 in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But the friends would publicly discuss their thoughts online and would post about their plans to, quote, get a handful of dank seeds from SoCal that they could plant, grow, and sell in Norway. And it's not really clear if Uncle Bjorn knew what Simon was up to with all that. I kind of doubt it, but...
I don't know. That's another thing, too, is that Simon was basically an adult at this time. Uncle Bjorn is not his mom or dad. It's his unkie. I feel like it's just kind of weird.
Right. We don't know the culture of their family, so it could have been very normal for them to want that kind of a lifestyle.
We really shouldn't speculate too heavily on it because we really don't understand them. And we'll talk so much more about how we don't understand them or the things they say or the things that they do.
Right.
So they're weird. They do weird things. They say weird things. It doesn't matter.
And Simon's aspiring goals in life in this time don't make him a bad person.
Yeah.
Since it was only weed, but it seems like there was a nonchalant attitude in regard to adopting the lifestyle of becoming a drug dealing caravaner.
Yeah, at least from his perspective.
Yeah. It can be argued, or at least in one of our main sources, but weekly, that this drug dealing caravan lifestyle that Simon wanted to live out so badly could have been inspired by his mother's own lifestyle that she had supposedly been living for the last 5-6 years. A time where she was totally absent and struggling. So it's indirectly inferred that there is a possibility that Sabina acted as if she was a well-off hotshot caravanning drug dealer and was somehow leading an easy, fulfilling lifestyle doing so, which was enough to convince Simon to follow in her footsteps.
Right.
And this is a narrative which is unsubstantiated, but is often used as possible evidence to prove that Sabina had a history of drug use or dealing.
Right. And yeah, maybe. Like, he could have just been romanticized. Like we said, we don't know.
He's a teenager.
Yeah. It's all kind of weeble wobble, whatever.
That's a town in Sweden, right?
Weeble wobble?
Yeah.
It's where Leif Erikson's from.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So at some point in 2007, Sabina would travel back to Europe and she would be living in Cork, Ireland with a man who is often referred to as her, quote, husband. But we know he is not her husband. We will call him her partner. So moving on into the year of 2008, the week of May 11th, Ursula would actually arrive in Cork to visit Sabina. Sabina's partner would report that upon her arrival, Ursula and Sabina became completely inseparable and unwilling to leave each other's side and were attached at the hip with eyes on each other at all times.
Does that mean that they were just staring at each other? Or does that mean that they just were constantly like aware of?
Like, I think they had to be in the same room. They had to be aware of what each other were doing all the time. They didn't go out and do things without each other. I think that it was like a whole thing.
When I first read your research notes and it was written like that they always had eyes on each other, I thought they were literally just like staring at each other and like wouldn't look away. And I was like, yo, these bitches are crazy. But I mean, they are.
They were kind of going crazy because it was creating a ton of tension in the household.
Yeah.
And eventually by the end of the week, Sabina and her partner would break out into an argument. And sometime after this argument, the twins would pack 2 separate bags, sneak out of the house without notice or reason, and start heading north to Dublin with Liverpool as their secondary destination. And the two would travel from Cork to Dublin either by rail, bus, or car, a trip that can take anywhere between 3 to 4 hours. And then they would get onto a ferry, taking them from Dublin to Liverpool, which is about 7 to 8 hours. There is conflicting information in regards to when and why the twins left Cork, and here's why we won't be really delving into this. It is obvious that neither Sabina or Ursula had a solid plan of action, and the twins' travel shenanigans from Cork to Liverpool are not really relevant. There's nothing really available about what happened. All we know is that they went from Cork to Dublin, and then they got on a ferry, and then they were in Liverpool. Some sources try to make a constant effort to create a narrative in which there's like logic and reason behind their actions, but as we'll see, there is no logic and there is no reason. So, regardless of the spotty timeline, we're able to begin our story on the Saturday morning of May 17th, 2008.
So that morning, around 8:30 a.m., after arriving in Liverpool, Sabina and Ursula would walk to the St. Anne's Street police station with the intention to file a report. They apparently expressed concerns for the safety of Sabina's children, both of which were still over in Ireland. Sabina explained that her children were with her partner, a man named Michael Dossow, and gave the officers their home address in Collegewood, Cork. When the police asked what kind of danger the children were in, they wouldn't say, and just repeated over and over again that the children needed to be checked on.
Check the children.
Have you checked the children?
Check the children.
The call is coming from inside the twins. Sorry. The two women would continue to beg for a wellness check for Sabina's children, but when asked further questions, they just clammed up. The twins refused to tell the police what they were doing in Liverpool or where they were going. And when the police asked them why they traveled from Ireland to England to make the report, they refused to answer.
Of course.
It's like, why did you go to a totally different country
Typical
to
Swedish
report this
behavior.
when you were already there? I can't say.
I don't know.
I can't tell you.
I can't tell you anything. Just check the children.
Just check the children. So after a game of telephone, the police arrived at the given address of Michael Dossow's home in Collegewood, Cork, to perform a wellness check on Sabina's children. Unsurprisingly, everything was totally fine, and the two children were totally safe.
Yeah.
The police would also discover that Sabina's two children, that she said were her children, a boy and a girl, both under the age of 8, were not her children at all. They were Michael Dossow's children.
Yeah.
And it's murky whether or not Sabina had like a stepmother sort of relationship with Dossow's children, but biologically she was not related to them.
Yeah.
She was not their mother.
No relation. Not her children.
Michael Dossow explained to the police that he and Sabina had gotten into an argument about money,
Supposedly,
on the night that the twins apparently ran away. He would also admit that he was shocked that Sabina and Ursula were in England at all and seemed to be a little confused and genuinely concerned. And many will argue that it seemed odd that Dossow never contacted the police after he discovered Sabina and Ursula had run away and failed to return home, but it seems there could be a few simple explanations for this. It's possible that Dossow assumed Sabina and Ursula had decided to just get a hotel for a few days, especially since Ursula was visiting. That could have been their plan the entire time, just to get away, get a room together, hang out.
That's literally so fucking simple and easy to expect. Me and my boyfriend got into an argument. Let's just go get a hotel. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And I mean, since they got into an argument, he may have been calling her and then she didn't answer and he assumed he shouldn't like push it and he just wanted to give her space.
She's with her sister. She's not like by herself, like, you
right,
know what
she's
I
not
mean?
in danger.
No, not right now.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet.
I think for reasons that he didn't call the police, I think it's more likely that people just put too much weight into how serious Sabina and Michael Dossow's relationship really was.
Yeah.
They could have just been friends. They could have been roommates, loosely romantic. We just know that they weren't married, but we don't know exactly what their relationship was. He could have been like, I don't give a fuck. She might be fucking some other dude. I don't care.
She very simply could have been just loosely romantic, could have just been crashing on and off at his house. Maybe they were on and off again a lot.
Well, and sometimes I've heard of, I've heard of people just being like, oh, this is my hubby, this is my husband. And it's just like some dude they know.
Yeah.
It's like some dude that they're living in his attic or some shit.
Well, and also, like, if you watch the BBC documentary, there are police officers who refer to Michael as her partner.
Right.
And then in the news, he's always referred to as her husband. Oh, her husband. Oh, her husband. So there's misinformation and it gets a little bit complicated there. We don't know if they're in a relationship or not. I think it's fair to assume that maybe they were, but we don't know how serious it was. And that's why I think it's especially strange that she believed that his children were her own and that they were in need of protection from some unknown force, as if it was her responsibility. And of course, she could have loved these children, right? I don't know. But it's extra weird that she was able to convince the police that there was a very serious danger over children that were not her own.
I think that's highly unlikely. A child being loved in Sweden, that doesn't sound right.
This is Ireland. It's different.
Oh, they're all the same to me.
But I just don't think it's that weird. People put so much on that. Why would he not go looking for them? Why wouldn't he call the police? Maybe he just is laid back.
Maybe she's done this before.
Maybe she's done this before. So I don't put too much weight into that. I think it's more of a big deal that she thinks that those kids are hers.
Right.
She's really showing some delusional fear.
Right. And in addition to the delusional reports about Michael Dossow and her children being in danger, both the twins in the police station were exhibiting really strange, hysterical behavior in the lobby. According to the officers present, the twins were whispering in Swedish to each other and seemed incredibly stressed. At one point, Ursula freaked out after a man in like a fluorescent safety vest walked through the front door of the lobby. And at the first sight of the man, Ursula screamed and jumped over the reception desk to escape from the man.
Who's like not doing anything.
Yeah, and she's pointing at the stranger who's confused. And she's hysterically crying and screaming over and over again that he, quote, wasn't a real police officer.
He very well couldn't have been a police officer
just
at all.
Like
He's
some
just
dude who's like on his lunch break from a construction site.
He's like, oh, can I use the bathroom? Like, it's a civilian.
You're not a cop.
It's a civilian. It's like a civilian waiting room in a police station.
Right.
So that's even weirder, obviously.
I mean, maybe only cops are allowed in the police station. Ever.
Well, also, I think cops in the UK don't necessarily look like the cops here.
True.
So, but still, she's tripping. She's freaking out. She's...
Weird assumption to jump to that some guy who just walked in the door is like impersonating an officer and gonna hurt them.
Yeah. And
maybe it's not.
This is kind of, well, and same thing with Michael. This is kind of like the beginning of the delusion that things are not what they are and that people are not who they are.
Those are my kids and you're gonna hurt them and you're not a real cop.
He's like, no,
Do you need something?
I'm here to report an incident. I'm here to use the bathroom.
And I'm about to press charges on you. No. So after Ursula's freak out, after jumping over the desk and screaming at this poor man, the two women were comforted briefly, but they snuck out of the station when the officers weren't paying attention to them.
Love that. They keep doing that. They'll do this the whole time.
Yeah, they'll freak out, people calm them down, and then they just sneak off. But around 11 a.m., the police in Cork reported to the Liverpool station that everything was fine with the children, but the twins were long gone. Yeah. No one to report to. They were fucking gonzo.
Yeah, they're like, okay, cool. And then they're like, oh, where'd those two women go that we haven't seen for like 2 hours?
Where's that lady who was screaming at me behind your desk?
So we're not sure when the twins departed the St. Anne Street police station. We just know that it was before 11. And they ended up at the Liverpool Lime Street bus station, which is only about a 10-minute walk from the St. Anne Street police station. And they ended up boarding a southbound National Express coach at 11:30. So once again, the reason why they got onto the bus in the first place is unknown, but some speculate that they may have been trying to get to an airport. But why an airport, you say? The bus the twins boarded was the Stoke-on-Trent coach, which was a one-way straight shot bus to London. If their destination was London, they could have been trying to get to one of the 6 major airports in the city, most likely the London Heathrow International Airport. Heathrow was likely offering direct flights to Norway, and it's possible that Oslo or the nearby city of Fredrikstad could have been their destination. And this is because, as of 2008, Simon was living in Norway, and it was very likely that he could have been in either of these cities. And we know this because Simon would brag to his friends on MySpace about his lifestyle in Norway, caravanning and dealing. In a post, he would say, "I've got a place in Sweden."
I have a place in Sweden, end quote.
I've got a place in Sweden where we can hang, a trailer in Oslo, another place in Fredrikstad, and my Uncle Bjorn has a sailboat where we can just chill. Oh, and tell him we're going to be selling on the side. Man, we are going to have it made by the summer.
Wow.
So Oslo and Fredrikstad. And he's also somewhere in Sweden, but Oslo and Fredrikstad.
He's just like all over the place.
He's like has so many places to live. So
what a European problem to have.
Ugh.
I have so many places to live.
I like can live anywhere I want. All right, I don't know if it was like that in 2008, but anyway, others have pointed out that they may have been trying to get to Norway for holiday. May 17th, which is my little sister's birthday, is Norway's National Flag Day / Veterans Day holiday. Online, the holiday is painted as good-natured fun with children's parades and speeches and wreaths that decorate the city. And then there's a salute that's fired for all the fallen Norwegian soldiers at noon. And Simon mentioned celebrating online because he was stoked to make money from it.
Oh, like at the events and the parades.
Well, and this is because there's actually a tradition. It's called, I don't remember the full word, but they call it Rus. And it's like all the graduating students wear different colored jumpsuits depending on what field of work they want to go in. And they just have like a debaucherous couple weeks of like just drinking and doing whatever they want and just being kind of crazy. And I think that, you know, he was going to be selling to them. It was really popular back then. It's not very popular now because the police like heavily regulate it. I don't know how alive the tradition is, but it was in 2008 for sure.
It's no Mardi Gras.
It's no Mardi Gras, but it's just a bunch of really debaucherous teenage Nords just going nuts because
Sounds fucking awful.
because they're 18 and then they're like, now I get to go be an engineer. I'm like, I don't know.
With my free college.
With my free college, you fucking assholes. Anyway, I think it's fair to say that if the twins were on their way to Norway to celebrate Flag Day, it would make sense that they were in a hurry to not miss out on the festivities. But it seems very unlikely that they were in a hurry to have a celebration when they were in so much delusional distress. They're not like,
I mean,
can't wait to get to Flag Day.
I'm
like,
kind of that way when I'm traveling, even if it's for something fun.
Hurry, like everyone is like, no one is who they are and our children are in danger. Better go celebrate Flag Day. Like, I don't think that's what's happening.
Okay.
They're also not even Norwegian.
Yeah, but like a party's a party.
I'm pretty sure that Norway and Sweden are not interchangeable and they don't like to be interchangeable.
Well, white Americans love Cinco de Mayo, so I don't really know what to tell you.
That's so different, and I'm not going to get into it, but I know what you mean.
How is it different? It's the same. It's a culture the people aren't in, and they just celebrate it anyway.
I mean, yes, but I think that, I don't know, I can't get into this. I think that Swedes and Nords think that their culture is very different from each other, but they're all tall and white and blonde and do the same stuff and all sound the same to me because I'm an American, and that's probably offensive, and I don't really know what else to say other than do you.
I say Hergendurgen.
I say Dinga-dinga-durgen.
Dinga-dinga-durgen meatball, Swedish meatball.
Yeah.
That's about all I know of Swedish culture.
They eat lutefisk and like other stuff too.
Aren't you Swedish?
I am.
Cool. Represent.
So I don't think that they were going to go celebrate. I think that's a really, really fucking lame ass thing to say. And I think that they were there to go see Simon. I think that they were going to try and go to Simon and Bjorn. I think that makes way more sense. But why would they go all the way to London to try and get to maybe Heathrow when they could have literally just traveled 36 miles east of Liverpool and board an international flight to Norway at the Manchester airport?
Because they were insane.
Yeah. It all kind of just comes down to the same thing of like they just didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah, pretty much every event after they left
is like out of
Ireland
control.
is just we're doing something and we're stressed about it.
We're stressed about it. And it's also so useless to try and make sense of it.
You could smack any reason on it and it just doesn't.
They're like, they were trying to get
It's
to
whatever.
Liverpool to get to an airport, but there was an airport nearby. They were trying to get to Norway maybe for a holiday, but maybe they didn't know where they were going. It's like, I don't know anything about anything.
They didn't know shit. I don't know shit.
They don't know anything.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't even matter. So they could have been trying to get to Manchester. I don't fucking care. I don't know what the fuck they were doing. It doesn't even fucking matter. I'm over this. I'm over that. So as soon as the twins were seated on the Stoke-on-Trent coach, they did nothing but refuse to settle in. Both Ursula and Sabina held their bags, a white duffel bag and a black and white backpack, respectively, to their chests as if their lives depended on it. and their demeanor was off-putting to both the passengers and the driver. They were kind of causing a scene.
An hour into their ride, the Stoke-on-Trent bus driver ended up pulling into the southbound Kiel service station, and whether the stop at the station was unplanned, scheduled, or prompted is highly debated, but the most common theory is that the stop was unplanned. The bus driver's decision to stop at the Kiel station was due to intuition, as he felt like the twins' nervous, erratic behavior was suspicious enough for him to believe they were a risk to himself and his passengers' safety. And that seems very reasonable to me, even now, but back then, the London bombings had occurred only 3 years before.
Literally.
On the morning of July 7th, 2005, 4 suicide bombers detonated a series of homemade explosive devices in succession, all on public transit. And there were 3 attacks aboard London's underground train system, and the 4th attack occurred aboard a double-decker bus in Camden. 52 people died in the attacks, and more than 700 were injured. It's also fair to mention the IRA, the Provisional Irish Republican Army, had been responsible for a multitude of attacks in the UK for several decades. So, very reasonable for him to be like, you're acting strange. There's been a lot of fucking, like, domestic terrorism.
He did the right thing. People are like, oh, he got in there to switch out a driver, and maybe someone needed to pee. It's like, no, he pulled over because they were acting fucking crazy. And he was genuinely afraid that they had homemade bombs on them.
Yeah, and I think I saw it mentioned somewhere that the station wasn't made for, like, stops. It was like a transfer station, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so it was not a planned little, does anyone need to stretch their legs?
No.
Like, it was not a convenience.
No.
It was, I think we're in danger. I'm gonna pull over and get these fuckers off my bus.
Yeah.
So, regardless of the reason, the driver of the bus pulled into the Kiel station around 1:30 p.m., and both Ursula and Sabina, still clutching their bags to their chests, would rush off the bus against the driver's wishes. At first, he's probably stopping the bus to ask them what's going on, but they just, whoop, they're gone.
He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Let's figure out what's going on here, and they're like, whoop.
Getting off the bus.
Right. And then they're puttering around in the parking lot, and they're standing really close to each other and whispering to each other. The behavior was obviously abnormal and very suspicious, and the tensions with, like, the bus driver and the passengers were really high. They were super nervous.
Yeah.
And at one point, the twins would rush around the backside of the station building out of eyesight. And for the driver, he's like, final straw. So he came to the conclusion that the 2 women were plotting something.
Right.
So after a while, the twins returned, but when they tried to board the bus again, the driver refused, and he physically blocked them from the door. He confronted them and asked why they were acting so suspicious and nervous, and if they had a problem or they needed help, and they just refused to respond. The driver told them if they wanted to get back on his bus, he would have to search their bags for any illegal items or weapons, and again they refused. Unable to ensure the safety of himself or his passengers, the driver radioed his superiors and reported that there were 2 foreign women acting suspiciously and refusing to cooperate with a bag search. And shortly after that call, the driver would reboard his bus, shut the doors, and depart the station without Ursula and Sabina, and he left them pacing the parking lot. The manager of the southbound Kiel station, Melissa Dutton, was now aware of the current situation, and she decided to take a look for herself, secretly watching the women from outside the lobby. She could see that the twins looked totally normal. They were both average height and lean, with blonde hair pulled back into ponytails and wearing normal clothing. Ursula was wearing a green turtleneck fleece, a bright green puffer jacket, and dark jeans. Sabina was wearing a long red peacoat, a purple turtleneck sweater, and denim jeans. Melissa did find it obvious that the 2 women seemed as if they were trying to obscure their faces, as both Ursula and Sabina were wearing large, dark sunglasses and hats. Ursula was wearing a simple black baseball cap, and Sabina was wearing a red visor embroidered with the words, "Time to believe" on the front.
So funny. Literally, like, so fucking funny.
Time to believe my fucking delusions.
Oh my God.
Believe anything.
Believe anything.
As Melissa continued to watch, she observed the similar behavior that the driver had reported. Both the twins were having a very intense conversation, with their bags still white-knuckle clutched to their chests. And Melissa would agree that they were plotting something, or so it seemed.
Yeah.
And believing that there was the possibility of an attack, she would quickly call the police and report that there were 2 women at the Kiel station who may be carrying explosives.
She went for it.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
She was like, yeah.
Like this driver just called in that these weirdos are here being weird.
Yeah.
And I see them being weird.
Yeah.
Can you like send someone?
Yeah. Like the bus driver was like, I think there's something wrong. And Melissa was like,
There is something wrong.
Melissa was like, I'm going to call the police and tell them that there's terrorists here, maybe. Like,
Right,
literally.
It's worth checking.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone's on edge.
Yeah. She did the right thing. She was probably one of the only people who did the right thing. Her and the bus driver, I think, in this
Right.
whole situation were the only ones who really did what was supposed to be done.
Yeah. Another theme going forward, I mean, there's the theme of like, people will speculate on why the twins did all the things they did, and it's not for any actual concrete reason that makes sense. But another theme is that there were so many failings from different public sectors on so many levels
Yeah.
where a lot of what ends up happening could be avoided if people just wouldn't fucking suck at their jobs.
Yeah. It's kind of multifaceted because there's all of these.
It's so many levels of people fucking off.
Yeah. There are some people who care. There are some people who said that they cared after it happened, but in the moment they made the wrong decisions. It might have been easier to just say, oh, everything's fine. Just do this, just do that. And it all resulted in really grave consequences.
Radio grave consequences?
Radio grave consequences.
So, yeah, she called the police, and the twins chain smoked in the parking lot. And while they were doing that, 3 officers arrived in response to Melissa Dutton's call. The officers briefly spoke to the twins, but surprisingly, the twins' collective demeanor had flipped on a total dime. During their interaction, the police found them to be pleasant, relaxed, and friendly, the opposite of how they were acting with the bus driver. The officers could see that they were lucid and attentive and didn't appear to be under the influence of any drugs or alcohol. It appeared as if the twins were not a danger to anyone, and the officers asked if they could assist them in any way possible. And both the twins would politely refuse the offer and told the police they were going to find their way to London on their own. So, seeing no need to argue, and without searching their bags, the police left the twins at the station so they could be just collected by the next southbound bus to London. And we'll see this behavior again, like I said, in the future. Both the twins have the wherewithal to deliberately change their behavior and attitudes in order to appear more normal, especially while in the presence of police. Ursula and Sabina would end up leaving the southbound Kiel station on foot almost 2.5 hours after their interaction with police. Don't know what they did in the time in between.
I think they were just in the parking lot hanging out.
Just putzing around.
I think maybe they were waiting for a bus. I don't know. There's a lot of missing time. Same thing, like they left the police station in Liverpool and then they puttered around the city for who knows how long, but they ended up getting on a bus at 11:30 at a bus station that was 10-minute walk away. It's like, what were they doing? Just walking around, doing whatever, being crazy.
Yeah, that's in general, that's all they're doing is being crazy.
Yeah.
But after they left Kiel Station, from there is where all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, shit goes fucking crazy. So almost immediately, the twins would be captured on CCTV walking down the center median of the M6 motorway, no more than 350 yards away from the station. But for some reason, the two were northbound. It's illegal to walk within the median lane of motorways in the UK. And of course, the twins were spotted by the operator as they stuck out like a sore thumb amongst the 6 lanes of highway traffic in a red peacoat and bright green puffer jacket. The operator contacted the police to assist in removing the women from the motorway. And no more than a few minutes after dialing 999, the operator watched in disbelief as the 2 women climbed over the center rail of the median and shuffled up to the edge of the northbound lane. Without looking towards the oncoming traffic, Sabina can be seen walking out casually onto the motorway almost as if she is using a crosswalk. She's immediately clipped by a small compact vehicle traveling at an estimated 50 miles per hour. And as the car screeches to a halt, Ursula can be seen following behind her sister, walking nonchalantly out onto the motorway as well. They're not necessarily walking slowly.
Slower than you would think. Someone who's, if someone's trying to get across this 6-lane highway, you would think they'd be like running, trying to dodge cars, and they're not.
They're not.
They're walking.
Yeah. And as the cars swerve around the road to miss the twins, Sabina can be seen popping up off of the pavement totally unfazed, almost as if she wasn't just grazed and thrown to the asphalt by a speeding vehicle.
Normal.
Sabina catches up to Ursula and continues to cross another 2 lanes of oncoming traffic. The women made it to the outside shoulder of the motorway, and neither seemed to acknowledge the chaos they had caused all around them. There's like cars that are stopped and like swerving around each other, like it's a whole fucking thing. And they're just...
And they're like, we made it across the
peace.
street.
They don't even look back. They just keep going. I read in one of the sources, there were even some people who said that they could see them when they were walking out and they didn't even look at the people who were driving. They didn't even turn to acknowledge the people that they were about to get hit by. They just
walked.
They just walked, and then they just
Like
kept
the
walking.
cars weren't there.
Almost like the cars weren't there, yeah. So Ursula and Sabina continued to head northbound on the shoulder of the M6, but the police would arrive no more than a few minutes later, one car cutting them off from the front and the other 2 behind. Coincidentally, the police officers that were called to the incident that day were not alone. These responding officers were actively being shadowed by another official vehicle that was carrying the film crew for the very popular and exciting BBC TV show Traffic Cops.
Traffic cops.
That's the theme song, too. And unexpectedly, the Traffic Cops film crew would end up capturing some of the most disturbing footage ever recorded on the show. And arguably some of the most disturbing footage like I've ever seen.
I would say at least some of the most disturbing footage that has been aired on public television.
Yeah.
So the following description is as seen in the footage taken by traffic cops. Both Ursula and Sabina can be seen standing still, arms crossed and chain smoking while speaking with the police, and they appear calm and composed, still holding their bags, but much more casually now. Sabina appears to be totally unharmed from her fucking clip with the vehicle from before. An officer explains the situation to the camera and claims they haven't figured out why they were walking across the motorway. When asked if they speak English, he says, yes, only one of them speaks English. The one in the red, which was Sabina, got knocked down by that red car over there, and we have got an ambulance en route. She seems all right, but I'm not a doctor. He's asked, is she, Sabina, the one who speaks English? He responds, yes. As the police continue to debrief one another, an officer can be seen speaking with the twins in the background. His attention is specifically on Sabina, as it's possible that Ursula, although she spoke English very well, was just refusing to speak to officers. One moment, they're standing calm, and in the next, all hell breaks loose. Ursula suddenly takes a step forward, her white duffel bag falls limply from her hand, and staring straight ahead in a trance, she tries to sprint into oncoming traffic. The officer, distracted by Sabina at first, acts as quickly as he's able and instinctively grabs her sleeve. But Ursula flails, and her hat flies off her head, and she violently breaks out of her jacket and bolts. She makes it across the first lane of traffic before coming into contact, if you can call it that, with an 18-wheeler semi-truck in lane 2, falling under the back end of the carriage and is crushed by the rear tires. And Sabina can be seen watching her sister getting probably fatally crushed by the semi, her face blank with no reaction. And the police, in horror, watch as the semi screeches to a halt with Ursula still crumbled underneath its wheels. Her legs are like sticking out from under it.
Yeah, it's like really, really fucked up. And in the video, they're all like, oh no, stop, oh no. It's like really, really bad. And it's so weird because Sabina's just standing there like with her arms crossed, like smoking a cigarette.
Just looking.
And it's kind of confusing to think, oh, how did she get underneath the back end? She literally runs out into traffic and just like bonks into the side of that semi. She didn't even try to go under it or around it. It's almost like she was trying to run through it. And that's, I think, how she ended up underneath it.
Yeah, because she bonks into it and then gets caught underneath.
You can watch her bonk into it. Like, it's not like she dove underneath the car. She literally just runs and bonks.
I love to see a good bonk.
Me too.
I don't have a spank bank. I have a bonk bank.
Oh my God.
Maybe even a bank bonk. So Sabina is crushed under the wheels. No more than a second later...
Ursula's crushed under the wheels.
Oh my God. Thank you. Crumbled under the wheels. No more than a second later, amongst the confusion and shock of it all, Sabina turns her head to look towards the oncoming traffic and dashes. And Sabina can be seen jumping into lane 1 and is immediately struck by a Volkswagen Polo going 45 miles an hour. Like a ragdoll, Sabina flies over the hood of the car. Less than 10 feet away, 2 officers watch Sabina's body hit the asphalt hard, and they both turn away only for a moment in pure shock and horror. As the car screeches to a halt, Sabina rolls across the pavement, only her boots visible and her legs limp and twisting around in the air.
She gets hit so fucking hard. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the two officers, they watch it happen and they don't even know. Like, they just see something terrible happen and it's just that reaction.
Yeah, they just involuntarily just like turn away.
Because of, both of them at the same time.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
So while Ursula's intentions for running into traffic are not known, Sabina's were obviously purposeful. She wanted to get hit. With heavy traffic all around them, the officers jump into action as they call for immediate assistance and ambulances for, quote, 2 fatalities.
Yeah, they believe they were dead.
Because why the fuck wouldn't they be?
Why wouldn't they be dead, yeah.
Sabina can be seen still on the pavement, unconscious, being covered by a rescue blanket. And the car which struck her having a huge dent in the roof and a shattered windshield. However, to everyone's disbelief, Ursula is completely conscious. And she just got hit by a fucking semi.
She got crushed.
She got run over.
She got run over, yeah.
At first, Ursula can be seen bloody and moaning on the ground for a few moments, but she then quickly begins to fly off into a fit of rage, and she screams out in delusional anger as she bites and spits at the officers.
Here's a little audio from BBC.
Yeah, here's a little audio from the BBC show, so you can listen for yourselves.
No, come on, my love, come on, you've hit your head, calm down. We are the police, calm down. Yeah, and the doctor's en route. It's okay, calm down. She appears very disorientated.
After being unconscious for nearly 15 minutes, Sabina comes to and sits up with urgency and rises to her feet. Shocked, Officer Tracy Cope says over and over, "I'm here to help you. We are here to help you. Please remain calm, just chill." And Sabina, showing no signs of injury or any awareness of her situation, pulls away from Officer Cope and begins to briskly walk away with her rescue blanket still in her hand. Officer Cope holds her arm and begs her to relax. Sabina looks into the camera and lifts the rescue blanket up to her head to obscure her face. And she asks, "Why do you film me? Why did they continue to film?"
Actually, that's a very interesting question. This is something that I was really concerned about and really curious about. And from an outsider perspective, it's pretty clear to see that the police were dealing with a very serious situation, but the traffic cops crew continued to film the two women up close, and they were determined to get the best shot, whether they were alive or not. But this may be because the UK is different from the US when it comes to filming and recording citizens. So, according to the British Security Industry Association, a research study agreed that there are as many as 5 to 7 million functional CCTV cameras all across the UK. These CCTVs include public, government, corporate, and civilian-owned and operated and monitored cameras. So they claim that it's an average of around 1 camera per every 12 people in the UK. So mass public surveillance is totally normal in England, and it seems to be a relatively accepted part of everyday life. And mass public surveillance, to put it as simply as possible, has been set in place to be used as a tool to help prevent crime. CCTV cameras help deter criminals from committing crimes, and if they do, they capture them in the act. And it's estimated that the average English citizen is captured on CCTV anywhere between 50 to 75 times a day, depending on how active they are outside of their homes.
So, while that's true, and it is just like a surveillance state, right, for safety, I personally think that they kept recording just because it's good TV.
Yeah, I think that too.
There are so many instances since the history of television where a fucked up thing happens on TV and obviously a crew can cut away and they just fucking don't.
Yeah.
You know, people getting hit by cars, people shooting themselves in front of the camera,
right?
All kinds of death and fucked up shit like that. And people keep it on because it gets ratings.
Right.
They can brush it off as being like, oh, it was live. Ugh.
Right.
This obviously wasn't live.
No.
But still, it's good TV. And it's entertaining.
I think it's also like a nonchalant attitude about it.
Yeah.
You know, I read a little bit about people feeling like it's an obstruction of their rights, but I don't really think that many people are that concerned about it because it doesn't seem like, I'm not quite sure. But I did find it interesting. 50 to 75 times a day? That's a lot to be on camera.
It is a lot, but
how are you supposed to commit any crime?
You have to remember, though, that those statistics are just from England. And they're from Sweden, so they may not be used to all of that surveillance.
Right.
She's been totally dissociated from the entire situation this whole time.
I personally would like to think that they did see the film crew when they were standing there talking to the police officer, but another part of me thinks that they didn't see them at all.
That's what I think.
She like came to after being hit by the car and then saw all of these people around her with video cameras.
Right.
It's like, obviously there's a mental health crisis going on. I know that it's only 2008 or something, but we'll see actually the reaction of the police officers and the steps that they took after. I think that there were some things that they did really, really good about, like not beating her in the street with batons because they knew she was having a mental health crisis.
Keep it on the record.
Yeah. But there were some things that were very wrong. So they were like, well, we're not going to beat the shit out of her.
Right. No, they weren't actively harming them.
Right. They were harming them in a different way.
Yeah, they were being negligent of the situation, which is, it's harmful, but they weren't actively harming someone who was in an emergency situation.
Right.
Which cannot be said for all situations.
Right. So anyway, take it away. Back to the M6.
Right, back to the M6. So, in an attempt to control the situation, Officer Cope from before attempts to gently detain Sabina because she's concerned about her well-being and worried she may act out again, but she was unprepared for what was going to happen next. On a dime, Sabina can be seen whipping around and without hesitation punches Officer Cope right in the jaw, striking her so hard it actually knocks her to the ground. And immediately Sabina dashes again. She jumps over the railing of the center median and runs straight through another 3 lanes of traffic, but this time doesn't make contact with another vehicle.
Yeah, lucky.
Yeah, lucky this time. Fuck, you think getting hit twice is enough, maybe?
I would think so, but she's like, nope, gotta go again.
I'm not dead yet.
I'm risking it all.
So an officer chases her down, which is when Sabina turns to the officer and puts her fists up in like a fighting stance, and she dances around the officer and he's pleading for her to calm down. I feel so bad for the cops, kind of. Like, I think they're just not on a human level. They just weren't trained for this.
Well,
Like, they could be maybe doing more, right? Ideally, but they're not prepared.
well, they're trained, but they're conditioned to not use excessive force on
Right.
people who are having a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
If this was America, they would have fucking shot her.
Oh, she'd be dead by now,
Oh,
yeah.
she would have been dead. They believe that she had head trauma
Mm-hmm.
and that she was having a mental health crisis. And she knew that if she used any excessive force, which her opinion of excessive force is using any sort of really intense physical detainment, her nightstick or baton or whatever, or her taser, like that would have been excessive, even after getting punched in the face.
It's reasonable to me. Yeah.
She's a reasonable woman.
Right.
UK cops are not the same as American cops.
No.
So there are some things that I'm like, okay, they did do a good job.
So basically, what ends up happening is 3 officers and 3 civilians have to come together to take Sabina down. And she doesn't weigh more than 125 pounds.
Yeah, she's
She's
small.
just a little lady.
Yeah.
And they're carrying her limb by limb, but Sabina can be seen violently thrashing and kicking and screaming for help and crying out, "They're going to take your organs."
She's tripping.
No, she's fine. Believing that Sabina may have been suffering from a head injury, like you were saying, the police prioritize restraining her so they can properly transport her to the hospital. But she continues to scream for help and pleads for someone to call the police. A medical helicopter lands on the M6 to airlift Ursula to safety as she continues to flail her arms and scream at EMTs and officers.
She's literally like a toothpaste tube.
Yeah, she's squished.
She's squished and she's like freaking out. Like,
Yeah, not because
clawing
she's
and
hurt, but because she's being airlifted.
She's afraid. She's afraid they're not.
Yeah, they don't think they're cops. They think they're in danger constantly.
Yeah.
Sabina would end up being sedated by EMTs and then removed from the motorway and transported to the hospital via carriage.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank God. So once Ursula and Sabina are removed from the motorway, the police were able to confiscate their belongings. On camera, 2 officers rummaged through their bags in search of identification cards, drugs, weapons, so on. In Ursula's white duffel bag, there were clothes, multiple cell phones, and her passport. In Sabina's black and white backpack, there were clothes, multiple cell phones as well, a laptop, and almost $1,000 in cash bills. Sabina didn't have any ID cards in her bag. Neither of the bags contained any alcohol, paraphernalia, or drugs, not even pharmaceutical.
They did, however, have hella cigarettes on them.
Oh, yeah.
They had so many cigarettes on them. It was insane.
Yeah,
the amount of smokes that they had on them.
I mean, considering they've been chain smoking basically this whole time.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they still have a bunch.
Oh, yeah. They have a bunch of cigarettes.
It's crazy. It's hard to believe that something like this could have happened and it was all caught on camera. But the worst is yet to come, as you will see that their madness is far from over.
Literally.
This is the beginning.
Literally. So this is the end of part 1 of the Eriksson twins. There's no way we can not make this a 2-parter. It's going to keep going, and it's all going to go downhill from here. I love it. This was the first terror climax, and there's going to be a second one. So
I love when I can climax twice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You don't know my lifestyle.
I really don't. But anyway, that was excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening to this.
We hope you had some schadenfreude, or at least some horrified interest
in this. And just please, come back next week.
It goes off.
It goes off.
It
pops
goes
off.
wild.
It's very sad, though. So be prepared. Catch you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good one. Bye.
At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety. Continue to carry out the following instructions.
Radio Grave is hosted by Amber Byland and Dominique Makasuya. Music courtesy of AOA Music, Carl Casey at White Bat Audio, and intro music by Simon Bickbyler. Audio mixing and editing by Amber Byland. Logo and cover art by Dominique Makasuya. All other media and sound clips used are protected under fair use and are for the purpose of criticism, commentary, news reporting, education, and research. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.